Okay, today's daf we're going to be learning is Nedarim Daf Tetvav. Okay, today's daf is sponsored by Sylvia Simmons in loving memory of Rachel Wall, Rachel Leah Bat Avraham Mordechai Zichrona Levracha, her maternal grandmother, on her yahrzeit today. Okay, I highly recommended to use the study guide. Maybe I'll decide to share it. We'll see, but otherwise just follow on your own. Okay, it's one of those confusing dapim. I will warn you, the cases are a little bit confusing, a little hard to get through in your head. We'll try to help you with it and organize it clearly. Cool. Let's just go back to our Mishna, and we'll go back and start from there, just so that our heads are in the right frame of mind as we get started. Konam shani ashen. Okay, we read this Mishnah. I'll already tell you. I told you yesterday, a very unclear Mishnah. We're going to see a few different ways of understanding it today. Konam shani ashen, shani medaber, shani ma'alech. Konam is the language of a neder. Shani ashen, shani medaber, shani ma'alech is right. Konam on me that I will not eat, sleep, or walk. But what's the issue? This is really what we call a davar she'ein bo mamash. This is not a tangible item. Neder usually doesn't apply to that, which makes this Mishnah a little bit strange. Because the Mishnah is going to say all those cases, or the case which we'll only get back to at the very end of today's class, which is haomer li isha konam shani mishamshech, be konam on you that I will not have relations with you. All these cases, hareze belo yachel dvaro. Okay, now this is a very strange language also. Until now, the Mishnah always uses the language of asul or mutal. The neder is valid and therefore it's forbidden, or the neder is not a valid neder, in which case it's permitted. All of a sudden, they change the language to one has to make sure one keeps to one's word. A little bit strange. We don't really understand yet. Now the Gemara brings in something from not connected or seemingly not exactly connected, what we will connect it very soon. Machloka between Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav and Rav Nachman. Konam enai b'shena hayom im eshan lemachal. It's very complicated language, but we're going to see a lot of things like this today. So let's get it clear in our heads. My eyes will be forbidden to go to sleep today. Okay, will be konam, which is a language of a neder, like a korban. Okay, it's forbidden for me to sleep. My eyes are okay because they're tangible. There's something real. So that's a language of a neder. Today, however, it'll only be a neder today if I sleep tomorrow. So Rav Yehuda says, already you can't sleep today because maybe tomorrow you will sleep. And then you'll have, if you slept today, it will have been retroactively forbidden for you to sleep today. Rav Nachman says, no, sleep today and just make sure and tomorrow not to sleep. Tomorrow you'll make sure not to fulfill the condition. To fulfill the condition, the vow will have applied. And it turns out you slept today and already didn't fulfill your vow. But Rav Yehuda agrees with Rav Nachman in the following case. Again, I'm just reviewing what we did yesterday. We're at the bottom of Yudala now, 2 lines from the bottom. If you say it the reverse, tomorrow I will be vowed. I won't be able to sleep. If I sleep today, well then yishanayom, you can sleep today because that's just you're fulfilling the condition. And now the neder is applicable. To which the Gemara says, why is there a difference? Because what Rabbi Yehuda is concerned about, kilo mizdar, when we're concerned that people aren't careful, what are they not careful about? Bitna'ah, about the condition. Aval b'isur mizdar. If there's a neder upon him, then of course he'll be careful. So if the condition is about today and tomorrow, the neder will apply. If I fulfill the condition, no problem, fulfill the condition. And the neder will happen, and tomorrow you'll be careful. But Rav Yehuda thinks, and this is very important to understand because we're going to ask 6 difficulties against Rav Yehuda today. That's going to be the bulk of today's daf. Rav Yehuda says, if your neder is today and the fulfillment, the condition is tomorrow, we're worried we already forbid you to do whatever you said you won't do in the neder today. Because once the day of the neder passes, and it's just a matter of, are you going to fulfill the condition or not fulfill the condition? And then will it turn out that retroactively it was forbidden to you today to sleep or not? People aren't so careful about that. That's not something that we assume. People are going to be very careful about and are going to make sure not to, so if I slept today, Rav Yehuda says, don't sleep today, because if the condition is, if I sleep tomorrow, today's sleep will be forbidden upon me. Tomorrow I might not be careful about it because it's only the fulfillment of a condition and not the fulfillment of a neder. Now, of course, once I fulfill the condition, retroactively, the neder will have been a neder. And so that's why Rav Nachman disagrees with him and says, Of course you can eat today, because you'll just be careful or sleep today. You'll just be careful tomorrow not to sleep. Okay, so you follow that there's a difference between Rav Yehuda, not according to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, do what you want today, figure it out tomorrow, be cautious tomorrow about whatever it is, and we can assume you'll be cautious either about the fulfillment of the condition or about the fulfillment of the vow. But Rav Yehuda distinguishes between fulfillment of condition and fulfillment of vow. Just to be really clear, right? The condition is, if I sleep tomorrow. The vow is, I'm forbidden to sleep today. I'm forbidden to sleep today if I sleep tomorrow. Then we're concerned if the vow is today and the condition is tomorrow, I might not be careful about the condition. I might fulfill the condition, and then retroactively it turns out that I slept today and I'm in trouble. That's why Rav Yehuda says, don't sleep today. In order, now we're going to start with 6 questions on him. The first question is going to be the longest and most complicated. It's going to have 3 steps. So if you see in the study guide, I wrote Shlav 1, Shlav 2, Shlav 3. A Shlav is a stage. So there's going to be 3 stages until we understand what the difficulty is. And this is what I told you yesterday, that it's not exactly clear what the Mishnah means, and the language of Baal Yachel is very strange. And that's why we're going to have a bunch of different interpretations of this Mishnah, and then you'll see. So Tnan, the Mishnah says, konam shani yashen, shani malech, shani medaber, v'chulei. That's just a quote from our Mishnah. If I'm konam to myself, I make it forbidden, the language of a neder, that I will sleep, that I will eat, that I will walk, right? Then I have to be careful, right? Again, I don't even know how to translate this. Bal yachel dvaro comes from the pasuk in the Torah. The Torah says, lo yachel dvaro. If you take a vow, you can't desecrate your word. You have to keep to your word. So now we have to figure out what on earth this means and why they use that language. Hechidam. I'm not going to even try to translate it. And that's what it means literally is he is in the stage of one cannot desecrate their words. Okay, that's as loose as I'm going to translate it right now. So hechidami, what exactly is the case? So the first issue is, we already said, you can't take a vow like this. This isn't a valid vow. And it's clear from the Mishnah, this is a valid vow. So if you want to say, like it says in the wording of the Mishnah, shani yashen, that I sleep, it will be konam, mi have nidra. That's not a neder. Right? Mi have means ha'im have, is it a neder? Meaning it's not a neder. Hatnan, it says in the Mishnah, chomer b'shvuot, stringency about oaths is the shvuot chalot al davar sheyesh bo mamash ve'al davar she'ein bo mamash. A shvua applies to tangible items and non-tangible items. Ma she'ein ken b'nedarim, but a neder, a vow, does not. V'sheina davar she'ein bo mamashu. And sleep is not a tangible item. You can't hold sleep. You can't feel it. Ela, so therefore, first stage is to say this clearly isn't what it looks like. It must be konam enai b'shena. First thing we change in the Mishnah, I want to point out something very interesting here. Okay, we've been very nitpicky about all these cases and about all the wording and all of this. All across today's daf, we're going to change the wording of the Mishnah. So we're going to say the Mishnah said this, but it didn't really mean this. So it makes it even more complicated and a little bit hard to swallow, because if we're being so careful about this language means this language means that, the Gemara is basically coming and changing the language that it said in the Mishnah. Do it with the first part, and we're going to do it with the second part of the Mishnah as well. So the first thing we change is it's not konam shani yashen, it's konam enai b'shena. You can already see they're creeping and getting closer to what Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman are disagreeing about, because that's the language that they talked about. Next, if you just say konam enai b'shena, open-ended, without a day, few days, whatever it is, but open-ended, my eyes will be forbidden on me to sleep. You can't say that that's the Mishnah, and the Mishnah says, there is no such thing of Baal Yachel here. And here we're going to learn something interesting. And now we're going to assume what he said for Shvuah is true for Neder, and the question is to what extent, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Rabbi Yochanan said, Shvuah shelo ishan shlosha yamim. If I take an oath, a Shvuah, and I say, I swear I will not sleep for 3 days, malkinoto, you get lashes right away. Why do you get lashes? Because this is what we call a Shvuat shav. This is a Shvuah taken for no purpose whatsoever, because there's no such thing. Okay, you could look it up at the Guinness Book of World Records. I don't know, I didn't look it up, but what's the longest amount of time somebody can go without sleeping? According to the Gemara, it's 3 days. A person cannot go without sleeping for 3 days. And therefore, malkinoto. They get lashes for taking an oath in vain. Okay, that's a shvuat shav, they call it, an oath in vain. There's a debate here. I told you this is going to apply to neder as well. The question is, do you get lashes for taking a vow that's in vain also, or is it just an oath? That's a question, whether we learn this entire statement to vows as well, or just the next line, which is yashen la'altim. And you can sleep immediately. Why can you sleep immediately? Thank you, Art, for telling us that the world's record is 11 days and 25 minutes. So definitely different than the Gemara. But again, even if, let's say, it's possible, the Gemara is saying that we're going by an average person who probably can't sleep for 3 days. So in any case, can't go without sleep for 3 days. So now the Gemara basically says you can sleep immediately. Why can you sleep immediately? Because this is totally invalid. Your statement meant nothing. Okay, it meant enough to say it's a shvuat shav, it's an oath in vain, and you have to get lashes for that. But that's a side issue. The main point is it's not valid at all. So if you took a neder, and that's what the Mishna was, konam einai b'shena, my eyes will be konam to me that they will not sleep, open-ended, that's a meaningless statement. So clearly that's not what the Mishna is talking about. So that's stage 2. So the end of stage 2 is going to say, therefore, okay, stage 1, we added the words konam einai b'shena, right? The words einai. Stage 2 ends with saying, Ela de'amal konam einai b'shena lemachal im eshan hayom. Okay, well, actually, we're not concluding yet. They're going to suggest that. What would be, okay, so first of all, you have to understand, why wouldn't they just say that you said konam einai b'shena hayom, period? That would have been an easy case, right? Instead of getting into this one with a condition, if I sleep tomorrow or whichever way we go, we're going to bring 2 options and show which one it's going to have to be. The easiest would be to say, so you gave a time limit. You said konam einai b'shena machal, or hayom, or something like that. So the reason the Gemara doesn't suggest that is because you don't need the Mishna to tell you that you have to keep your word. That's super obvious. The Mishna doesn't always tell us super obvious cases. So that can't be it. So therefore, they say it must be something a little bit more complicated, like konam einai b'shena lemachal im eshan hayom. Then my eyes will be forbidden to sleep tomorrow if I sleep today. Now, this can't be either, because ha'amart kol be'isure mizdaher. We all agree. Now, what does this mean? Bal yachel dvaro, the way they understand it, let's say we filled in those words in the Mishnah, which is what the Gemara suggests, that the Mishnah is saying, konam einai b'shena tomorrow, if I sleep today, hareze bebal yachel dvaro immediately. That means you can't sleep today. Now, if you read it as you can't sleep today, why not? Everybody says you can sleep today because the neder is tomorrow. And we already said that Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman both agree that no problem, fulfill your condition. We don't care. Fulfill your condition. And now tomorrow will be forbidden for you to sleep. That's okay. So that wouldn't say, the Mishna language of lo yachel dvaro wouldn't really apply. Lo yachel dvaro sounds like immediately it kicks in. So therefore, the Gemara assumes it must be ela pshita da'amal, even though I wouldn't say this was so pashut to get here, but stage 2 ends with saying it must be a case of, you said, because again, you need, it's konam einai b'shena, already we got that, that was stage 1, konam einai b'shena. You needed a limitation, hayom, but you needed it more complicated than that, otherwise it would have been obvious. So it must be konam einai b'shena hayom im eshan lemachal, if I sleep tomorrow. Now, at this stage, we're okay. So that's what it is. It's now the case where there's a machlok at Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman. Now, idelo naim hayom, if you didn't sleep today in this case, let's say you didn't sleep today, well then, kinaim lemachar ma bal yachel dvaro ika, has to be a case where there is bal yachel dvaro, where your words are, right? So now, it can't be a case where you didn't sleep today, because if you didn't sleep today, then there's no issue of bal yachel dvaro. The neder was on today. He said, if I sleep tomorrow, I won't sleep today. Okay, the vow is on today. So it can't possibly be, this is stage 3. Can't be that you didn't sleep today, because if you didn't sleep today, of course, your vow was fulfilled. There's no bal yachel dvaro. Therefore, elalav b'denai, it must be that you slept today. Okay, now why is that important? Well, they're telling you, if you say konam shani ashen shani medaber shani ma'alef, you say, which really means konam einai b'shena hayom if I sleep tomorrow. Today, my sleep will be forbidden upon my eyes. If I sleep tomorrow. If you sleep, now we have to finish the sentence. Right now, what it means is, when I sleep today, I risk not keeping to my word, because I basically created a situation where if tomorrow I fulfill the condition, I'll go against my word. Now that assumes, now here's the jump here, it assumes that it's what it's really telling you is sleep today if you want, but be wary that you keep your word, meaning worry tomorrow that you don't sleep. Because if you don't sleep tomorrow, it's fine. You didn't desecrate your word because you only said it's going to be forbidden for me to sleep today if I sleep tomorrow. So what it's basically saying is, if I sleep today, be careful tomorrow that I don't desecrate my word. That's how they read the Mishna. In which case, it's a tiyuv to the Rav Yehuda. It goes against Rav Yehuda because Rav Yehuda said, you can't sleep today, right? The way they read the Mishnah is assuming, and again, it's a little weird why the Mishnah, they would assume this, but the Gemara will immediately reject this, so don't worry. But they're assuming that the Mishnah is saying, go for it and sleep today if you want. Just be careful tomorrow not to desecrate your word. To which the Gemara says, Ki katane di'inayim. What do you mean? It could be Rav Yehuda, who basically says, don't sleep today because we're concerned you might not be careful about watching to not fulfill your condition. Don't sleep today, but what's the Mishnah telling you? The Mishnah often talks about cases where people go against the halacha. Di'inayim, what if you did sleep today, though? Then you're going to be desecrating your word because probably you won't do, right? You won't be careful about not sleeping the next day, and then we're going to have an issue. So it's only talking about, it's not talking about the ideal. The ideal is Rav Yehuda, who says, don't sleep today. But, what if you did? That's what the Mishnah is telling you. Ravina gives a different answer. Ravina amar la'olam kidikatani. He rejects all the stages. Says, let's go back to stage one. You assumed it can't be konam shani ashen, literally. I'm going to explain it the literal meaning of the Mishnah. The literal words. I'm going to take them very seriously and say, yes, this is a neder. Why is it a neder? We said, right, umay bal yachel. What's the bal yachel then? It's not usher by Torah law to give a neder like this. It's not a neder. It's on a non-tangible item. Midirabbanan. It's rabbinic. In other words, while we said chomer b'shvuot b'nedarim, the shvuot are even on intangible items, and a neder is not. But that's only by Torah law. Rabbinic law, if you say a language like that, it's going to be forbidden as well. And that's what the Mishnah is talking about. Now, you might say, Umi'ika bal yachel de Rabbanan, midrabbanan. Wait a minute. Bal yachel are coming from, bal yachel means do not desecrate. And that comes from the words of the Torah, lo yachel dvaro. That's a Torah prohibition. The Mishnah is using the language of the Torah. It must be they meant Torah prohibition. Is there such a thing of bal yachel as rabbinic law? To which the Gemara says, yeah, in fact, there is. I'll show you. Okay, and this is what we often call, they don't use these words here, but it's the same thing. Where often we have a drasha that looks like comes from the words of the Torah, quote explicitly a pasuk, and then the rabbis say, but this is rabbinic, and then the answer, it's an asmachta ba'alma, meaning, right, it's really a halacha midrabbanan, and they connect it to a pasuk just as a mnemonic device, or they connect it to the pasuk. But it doesn't mean that it's actually Torah law. So it could be that our Mishnah is referring to rabbinic law, even though they're using the language of the Torah. And we're going to see another example where they take something that's Torah law, that's rabbinic law, they learn it from the words Bal Yachel. So what's the case? Totally different case. Hatanya, it says in a Braita, here's our proof, Dvarim hamutarim, there's things that are permitted, v'acherim nahagu b'hem isur. But there's groups of people that are strict about it. Okay, this is what we call, right, chumras or minhagim, really customs, all sorts of customs that aren't based in halacha. Okay, but once you forbid something that's actually permitted, you really have to keep to it. It's kind of like a vow, because you're basically saying, I view this as forbidden. And not only that, but if you, let's say, live in a community where everybody's doing something, or there's a group of people forbidding something, and you don't hold by that custom, you are not allowed to do it in front of their face, okay? And basically, it seems like with an intent to get them like to say, come on, this isn't forbidden. Shenema, how do we know this? Because it says lo yachel dvaro. You can't desecrate their words, which means you can't try to pull them away from what they committed to doing. Now, clearly, what they committed to doing is not a Torah law, it's a custom, and it's even permitted to you. So clearly here, lo yachel dvaro applies in a rabbinic law. Okay, so far, this was the first difficulty. We answered it in two ways. Again, to review the difficulty, we had three stages that all got us to the fact that the Mishnah must be, by the way, you have to understand it like this. How could the Mishnah mean something way more complicated than it says? You have to assume that the way the Gemara understands it is, this was a catchphrase, this case of Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman of konam shena yom im eshan lemachal. It was like a case that was revolving, and therefore they said it in shortened language and figured everybody knows what we mean. Yeah, obviously, coming many years later, we wouldn't view it that way. But that's the way the Gemara is understanding the Mishnah. That the Mishnah used a shortened language to refer to a bigger statement, which is konam shena lemachal im eshan hayom. My eyes today will be vowed to be forbidden if I sleep tomorrow. And we thought that raised a difficulty against Rav Yehuda because it sounded like you can sleep today, just if you do, right? You might desecrate your words. To which the Gemara said, no, it's not saying ideally. It's saying if you did sleep today, well, then be careful not to fulfill your condition tomorrow. Then you can desecrate your word. You might desecrate. Or Ravina, who says, forget that whole understanding. It actually is understood in a simple form. And even though it's on a non-tangible item, it's forbidden anyway, but only by rabbinic law. Okay. Next case. Tanan. Now we're quoting a Mishnah from much later in Nedarim. Sha'at nehenet li ada Pesach. This is going to sound a little confusing, but the husband says to the wife, I am vowing that you will not benefit from me at all until Pesach. Let's assume they're standing at Sukkot. Okay? Right now, around this time of year. And he says, till Pesach, you will not benefit from me under the condition, that's why we're going to bring this as a difficulty, im telchi lebeit avich ad chag. If you go to your father's house anytime this entire year, even beyond Pesach, so again, it's a situation where the vow is going to be over before the condition is possibly fulfilled, right? We're going to have all this time after the vow that possibly you could fulfill the condition and retroactively have an issue with your vow earlier. So now the Mishnah says, if she in fact goes to her father's house in the first half of the year, remember, the condition is if she goes the entire year, right? If you go the entire year, you'll be forbidden to benefit from me until Pesach. If she goes before Pesach, asura b'hanato ad Pesach. So if she goes, let's say, in December, okay, then she can't benefit from the husband from then until Pesach. Sounds like what? She goes to her father's house sometime before the vow is done, right? The time of the vow before Pesach, she'll be forbidden to benefit from her husband. But but it sounds like from the language of this Mishnah, if she doesn't yet fulfill the condition, so long as she hasn't fulfilled it, she hasn't gone to her father's house yet, she can continue to benefit from her husband and just make sure that she doesn't go to her father's house the entire year, which obviously goes against Rav Yehuda, because Rav Yehuda said she can't go benefit from her husband from day one, because we're worried that once Pesach passes, maybe she'll forget, maybe she'll end up going to her father's house, and retroactively she'll have gone against her vow. So that's all from an inference from this. Again, the Mishnah had said, if she goes before Pesach, then she's forbidden to benefit, which sounded like, right? If she didn't go, she could benefit, which is definitely against Rav Yehuda. So Amar Rabbi Abba, no, he explains it. Halcha lifnei Pesach asura v'loka. If she goes before Pesach, she's forbidden and she gets lashes. Lo halcha asura ba'alma. If she goes before Pesach, what it means, asura means, it's asura. Okay, let's assume this woman went in December to her father's house and benefited from her husband, which obviously she fulfilled the vow, and now she fulfilled the condition, and now it's forbidden, and she went against it. Then she's forbidden, and if she does it, she gets lashes. Now, here's a little bit of a confusing thing. Who took the neder? He took the vow. Who gets the lashes? She gets the lashes. Okay, this is something I didn't have enough time to research enough, but I did notice that there's an explanation in the introduction of the Schottenstein to the Masechet, with a footnote that basically says that there's a debate really, and I have to see how the sugya works out. Okay, this goes back to neder in general. If I take a vow, I could take a vow either on myself and forbid other items that don't belong to me to myself, or I can forbid my items to you. Now, this is a case where the husband forbade his stuff to his wife. In which case, when it says lo yachel dvaro, you can't desecrate your word, it's his word, but she's desecrating it because she's actually going against the vow. The vow is on her. So it sounds from the simple reading of the sugya, and that's why I have to look into it further, because in the footnote, in the introduction, the Schottenstein, they basically say that there's a debate about whether she gets the lashes or he gets the lashes. By the way, it doesn't matter husband or wife, it could be any two individuals. So it's very interesting because it's saying that lo yachel dvaro, it has to apply. That basically means that it would have to apply even to her theoretically, even to the person who didn't make the vow, but since the vowed item is forbidden to her, then it would be a problem. Okay, so there's a debate about, let me read this. Just wrote the Ran, cites the Rambam that she's not liable to lashes since it wasn't her vow. He gets the lashes if he gives her any benefit. Okay, so the Ran, so I guess there's a debate about lokeh or lokah. That's the debate. How you read this word. Is it he gets the lashes or she gets the lashes? I guess that's how I was thinking it's only lokah, but I guess it's asura, she's forbidden, but it could be he's lokeh. So that's the debate here. Does she get the lashes or does he get the lashes? It's a fascinating question, because to think that someone could take a vow about you and then you're the one who ends up having to get the lashes, right? On the other hand, if they took the vow, forbade you, and you're the one who went against it, why should they get lashes? So you could see the two sides of it. It's a fascinating question in general. But that's not the focus of our discussion. So let's go back to our main point here. So he basically says, when it says asura, really, she's forbidden from day one, like Rav Yehuda said. This is at least the way we'll explain it according to. She's forbidden from day one. What's the issue? If she actually goes to her father's house before Pesach and then benefited from her husband, she'll actually get the lashes, or he'll get the lashes, however we define it. But there's lashes involved because they actually went against the vow. Lo halcha, but if she didn't go to her father's house, she's still forbidden, but asura ba'alma. She doesn't, and again, Rav Yehuda says, you're forbidden from day one because maybe you'll fulfill the condition later, but you obviously don't, nobody gets punished yet because you haven't gone against your vow, because you haven't fulfilled the condition yet. So as long as you haven't gone to your father's house, it might be forbidden to you from day one to benefit from your husband, but if you did, it's not like we're going to punish you for it. So don't worry about that source. That was question 2. Now we're going to quote as question 3, the continuation of that source, that Mishna. Ema seifa achal haPesach. What if she goes after Pesach? Again, the vow is done now, right? The time for the vow is done, but not yet done because she still has the rest of the half of the year to possibly fulfill the condition, and then retroactively the vow will be a vow. If she goes after Pesach to her father's house, bibal yachel dvaro, then there'll be a problem of going against the vow. Now, not necessarily true. If you go to your father's house after Pesach, but all that first half of the year, you didn't benefit from your husband at all, well, then you didn't go against any vow, because you can only go against the vow if you actually benefited from your husband. So, if you hadn't benefited from your husband for Pesach at all, mi kabal yachel. Is there bal yachel? No, of course there's no bal yachel. It's true. I went to my father's house, and he had told me, if you go to your father's house, you won't benefit from me the first half of the year. But I didn't benefit from him the first half of the year. So of course you can't say I went against the vow. I didn't go against any vow. Therefore, elapshita dietane. It must be that the Mishna is talking about a case where I did benefit. Now, if I benefited again, we're going to assume alma mitane. Therefore, it must be that I benefited, turning out Amud Bet. B'tiyuvta de Rav Yehuda. Well, then that means the woman, if she benefited the beginning of the year, and then she went to her father's house in the second half of the year, she will have gone against the vow. Now, that would only be in the case where, now Rav Yehuda says you can't benefit. So how, in the first half of the year, even if you haven't yet fulfilled the condition. So this seems to go against Rav Yehuda because it seems to presume that you could go the first half of the year and you could benefit from the husband. It's just that if you end up going to your father's house later on in the year, you'll desecrate the vow. So again, the Gemara is going to say, this is not a question because they're not talking about the ideal. They're talking about if you went and did it anyway. They're not saying go benefit at the beginning of the year and just be careful not to. And if you do, you'll desecrate your word or his word. But no, what they're saying is you shouldn't, right? We can read this source according to Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda will say, don't go the first half of the year at all. But if you did, and I'm sorry, don't benefit the first half of the year at all. But if you did benefit and then went to your father's house the second half of the year, well, you've desecrated your word. But that's not the ideal. That's if you go against the law and do it. Okay. So again, not a question to Rav Yehuda. And this is a similar type answer we gave before, which is, it's not saying you can do the vow, right? Go against it in the beginning until the condition's fulfilled. No, it just means if you did, well, then you can have an issue. You have an issue because if you did this and you did that, then you really desecrated the words. Tanan, fourth question, another Mishna. Sha'at neheneh li ad hachag, similar case, but it's a little bit different. The vow now goes the entire year. The vow is you will not benefit from me all year long. Im tachila beit avich ad Pesach. So it's kind of the reverse of the other case. If you go to your father's house the first half of the year, then you can't benefit from me all year long. Hachalifnei Pesach asura ba'anato ad hachag. So the Mishnah continues and says, if you went to your father's house before Pesach, which is basically the fulfillment of the condition, then asura ba'anato ad hachag. Then you'll be forbidden the entire year. Umuteret lelech achar Pesach. And then, right. And then, obviously, since the condition was don't go until Pesach, well, then you can go muteret lelech achar Pesach. So if you went before Pesach, then you can't benefit from your husband all year. But if you want to go to your father's house after Pesach, you can, because the condition was only until Pesach. So now, what's the inference they're going to have an issue with here? It says, again, that first line, if hachalifnei Pesach asura, this is the same thing we said before. She goes before Pesach, then it will be forbidden to her. But it sounds like lo hachalo. If she doesn't go, then it's not forbidden, which goes against Rav Yehuda, because Rav Yehuda said it's forbidden from day one, because maybe eventually, right, maybe sometime before Pesach you'll go. Right? We're standing now in November. It's forbidden from November, right? Because maybe you'll go in December or in January or in February. Anytime before Pesach will be a problem, which again sounds like it's not a problem unless she actually goes to her father's house, which means that Rav Yehuda is wrong, that it seems like it's not an issue. Go all you want, just make sure then, right? And benefit all you want, but right, don't go to your father's house before Pesach, right? Be careful not to do that. And if you do, well, then you'll have a problem. So again, Amarava, huadin da'afilu lo achasura, it's only halchasura v'loka, lo achasura ba'alma. Rava says, like Rabbi Abba said in the previous, which is no. It's also true that if you don't go to your father's house, it's still forbidden for you to benefit from your husband, because maybe you'll go to your father's house at some point before Pesach. That's Rav Yehuda. It's only telling you that if you went and you benefited, well, then you're going to get lashes again. Either you're going to get lashes, the husband's going to get lashes, depending on the debate we talked about before. But if lo alcha, if she didn't go, then it's still forbidden. It's just you're not going to get lashes. Next question. This is going to be 5 and 6, both within the same source. Kikar ze alai hayom im elech lemakom ploni lemachal. This loaf of bread will be forbidden to me today if I go to the following place tomorrow. Okay, so let's just say if I go to Jerusalem tomorrow, then today this loaf will be forbidden to me. Achal, if you ate the loaf today, harei ze bebal yelech. That means tomorrow you can't go to Jerusalem. Okay, that makes sense, right? So again, though, what does it say? It seems to presume that you could eat today, right? It's just if you eat, make sure not to go to Jerusalem. That goes against Rav Yehuda, who basically in this case would say, don't eat at all that piece of bread, just in case you go to Jerusalem tomorrow. To which the Gemara says, Mi katane ochel. Don't say this is a question on Rav Yehuda. Again, same idea that we keep saying. It doesn't say ideally go eat. It says achal katane dechi achal areza b'bal yelech. It just if you ate, if you went against what I said and you ate anyway, I told you don't eat, Rav Yehuda will say. But if you ate anyway, well then don't go to Jerusalem tomorrow, because retroactively, you'll go against your vow. So first part of that is not a problem. Next, the next line is halach. If you went to Jerusalem anyway, well, then you've gone against your word. Now again, it should have said, right? It's only that presumes that you ate and that you're allowed to eat. Mehalech lo, they say, v'kasha Rav Yehuda. It should have said, since we assume you're not going to eat because you know, like Rav Yehuda says, again, this is Rav Yehuda's glasses, wearing Rav Yehuda glasses when we read this Mishna. Actually, I didn't check if it's a Mishna, or it's a Tosefta, sorry, reading this Tosefta. It would have said, go to Jerusalem tomorrow. Because why? Because we know you didn't eat today because you're not allowed to eat. So go to Jerusalem tomorrow. V'kasha Rav Yehuda. Since it doesn't say that, it obviously sounds like it's not like Rav Yehuda. To which they say, Amar lecha Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda could answer, no. Hu adin deline mahalech. It could have said mahalech, but could have talked about in the ideal scenario, since you don't eat, you're not going to eat that day. So go to Jerusalem tomorrow because it doesn't make a difference at this point. You were careful not to eat today. But I did Ksani Reisha Achal, since the Mishna the Tosefta started out describing a case where you went against the law anyway and ate, because it didn't say ochel, you're allowed to eat. It said, if you ate, tannaitic halach. So therefore it gave the continuation, which is if you ate, and then if you went, you would end up desecrating your word, and therefore it doesn't teach us anything. Okay, it doesn't go against Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda can explain the Mishnah his way if he wants. And then again, the whole Mishnah is describing a less than ideal situation, where if you, again, it would say like this, if you ate, well then don't go. And if you went, then you desecrated your word. That actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, so again, conclusion of all this, if we go back to our Mishnah, right, and let's go with not Ravina, who understood our Mishnah is all rabbinic, but we basically are changing the words in our Mishnah, konam, shani ashen, shani medaber, and all that it's a case of hayom and the machal, and that it's talking about a less than ideal scenario. Not that you're allowed to, but right, that you're allowed to sleep today. No, what it's saying is, if you slept today, well, then you really have to be careful. But bal yachel dvaro, to make sure, bal yachel dvaro is understood as be very careful not to desecrate your word by keeping to the condition tomorrow and not having the condition come true, because then retroactively you'll go against your neder. And that's the way we can read the Mishnah according to Rav Yehuda. Obviously, according to Rav Nachman, we can read it much more simply. Okay, next. Haomer, another problem with the language of our Mishnah. Haomer lisha, konam shani mishamshech hareza bebal yachel dvaro. If you say it will be konam, that I will not have relations with you, that's bal yachel dvaro. To which the Gemara says, what are you talking about? That's not a neder. Ha mishtabe lamidoraita. Talking about forbidding him from having relations to her is like me saying to you, I'm forbidding you to benefit, let's say, Stacy, I'm forbidding you to benefit from Susan's food. I can't do that. Susan's food is not mine to do. The husband's rights to give his wife, which is to have relations with her, is not his right to basically say, it's not his, he doesn't have the rights to say no. It's basically mishuabad to her. She has rights to that. We've already learned. Dichtiv, we learned this in Ketubot and in Yevamot. He has to give her three things: clothing, right? She'er, ksud, and ona, food, clothing, or shelter. There's all different interpretations. We saw this before. And ona, which generally is meant to understood as sexual relations. So that means he can't deny her that. So a vow on something that he has no rights to, basically, because it's already promised to her, committed to her by Torah law, he can't deny her. It's basically like denying someone else's items to somebody else. So therefore, they say it must be, again, changing the words. I told you we're going to change the words here. But Omer, Hanaat Tashmishech Alai. The benefit of Tashmish with you will be forbidden to me, he says to her. I won't benefit from relations from you. Now, V'halo Kanichale B'Tashmish. What he's basically saying is, I don't want to benefit from relations with you. That he's allowed to do. How do we know he's allowed to do it? Because we're going to see a reverse case where the woman can say that to the husband. Okay, it's the same idea. It's just the reverse. Because the woman also has a commitment to have relations with her husband. And right from her perspective, right, he is also, it's an expectation that she has to give to him. She can't forbid that either. So Da'amar Rav Kahana said, Tashmishi alecha, here it's all about the language. If you say, my tashmish will be forbidden to you, you can't have relations with me. Kofino tal mishamashto. We force her to. She can't do that. She doesn't have the rights because it's one of the marital obligations. It goes in both directions. Okay, it's already like shibud is a lien, right? It's like leaned in, meaning he has rights to it. She can't forbid. But if she says, and here's a way around it, this is a loophole. Hana'at tashmishcha alai. She says the benefit of tashmish with you will be forbidden to me, asur. That actually can work. And not only does it work, but at that point, he can have relations with her, basically. In other words, even though she wasn't forbidding him from having relations with her, she was forbidding herself and benefiting from relations with him. But ein machilim lo la'adam davar ha'asur lo. Since he theoretically can have relations with her, but she can't benefit from it, so he can't have relations with her because he'll be, quote unquote, feeding her davar ha'asur is what they're saying. It's like giving someone food that's forbidden to them. Since the act, it's a two-way, right? It's got him and her at it. And therefore, he can't have relations with her without her being a party to it. And therefore, it's basically giving her a forbidden item, and he can't force her to do something that will make her be doing something forbidden. So likewise, back to our Mishnah, he can say, Hana'at tashmishech alai, I'm not going to benefit from relations with you, which in the end will be a valid vow that will make it forbidden for her to have relations with him, because he'll benefit, even though she'll benefit, and it's not forbidden to her, but he'll also benefit, and that will be forbidden, and she can't do something that will be forbidden to him. So, since that's the case, the Mishna is telling you, this is applicable, and right, it will be forbidden for her to have relations with him. So again, we've taken the Mishnah out of the context of the words and changed the words because it didn't make sense, the simple reading. Last thing for today, we're moving now to the next Mishnah. Shavua she'eni yashen, she'eni medaber, she'eni ma'aleh, asur. If you take an oath in the language of that I will not sleep, I swear that I will not sleep, I swear that I will not speak, that I will not walk, it's forbidden because that's an oath. An oath can apply to things that have that are intangible. Korban lo ochalach. Now we're going to have three languages that don't work, not as a neder and not as a shvua. Korban lo ochalach. So first of all, korban is not a language for an oath at all, so it wouldn't be an oath. And it's also not going to be a vow because korban could be a vow, but lo ochalach, it means, we've talked about this already, what I won't eat from you, which means, then what is it applying to? Seems right. It would have to be korban she'ochalach. Not right, what I will eat from you is a korban, not what I will not eat from you, then what is? And what are we referring to? Ha korban she'ochalach also doesn't work as a vow because we learned this already, because you're basically taking a vow on the life of the animal. Ha, you're saying this animal, the life of this animal will be forbidden, like it will be forbidden to be like the life of this animal. The life of this animal is not the korban itself, right? It's not the life of the animal, and that doesn't work. And lo korban lo ochalach will be mutar. Why? Lo korban basically means chulin, right? It will be chulin, what I won't eat from you. Now, this for sure doesn't mean anything, but maybe you would say that, therefore it means though, korban, what I will eat from you, right? If we say michla lavat hashomeahen, again, not a korban, what I won't eat from you, basically means it is a korban, what I will eat from you, then that would actually be a valid vow. What I eat from you is a korban. That would be a vow. But you would have to hold michla lavat hashomeahen. For the negative, you can get to the positive. And this Mishnah is the first line in tomorrow's daf is going to be, this Mishnah must be Rabbi Meir because the Mishnah says it's mutar. And it's only mutar because we don't hold michla lavat hashomeahen. If you will infer the positive from the negative, then this actually would be a statement that would be forbidden. Okay. And because it's not, right, again, what is michla lavat hashomeahen? It means from the negative, we can infer the positive. So if you word something in a negative way, not a korban, what I won't eat from you, you're really saying it is a korban, what I will eat from you. And then that would theoretically work. But Rabbi Meir doesn't hold by that, and therefore it's not an issue. Okay, finished for today. Like I said, a bit of a complicated daf, both in terms of rereading Mishnayot, and if we're so careful about the language here, we're changing all the language, and also difficult because there was a lot of confusing cases of what the t'nai is, what the neder is, what day we're talking about, it was a little bit confusing, but I hope that organized it for you. The sheet should also be helpful. Have a great day, everyone.